Welcome back to the Trending Communicator. I'm your host, Dan Nestle. Sometimes I think the word of the year for 2024 should be fractured, as in the fractured fill-in-the-blank landscape, the fractured media landscape, the social media landscape, the fractured political landscape, the fractured audience landscape. You get the idea. If you're in comms or in marketing, it's a lot to handle. I mean, if everything is fractured, which I think really means splintered and shattered, then we've got more and more pieces to contend with. More media channels, more influencers, more ways for audiences to consume content, and more ways for them to hide. Some in our profession, including your humble host, think that AI can help us deal with all of this. I mean, instead of writing 15 versions of an article for 15 channels, we can write one and easily use AI to repurpose it 15 ways. Simple. Is that what we should be doing? Is the answer to reaching all these separated and distinct fractures to take your precious video and chop it up for Instagram and TikTok and then post it as an article on LinkedIn or a separate article on Substack, a series of tweets for X, threads for Threads, and I don't know, puffy clouds for Blue Sky? I don't know what they're calling them there. Or is our content the thing that helped cause the fractures in the first place? Either way, AI certainly has a major effect on how we create, publish, and distribute. And the better we get at mastering generative AI, the better we'll get at answering these bigger strategic and philosophical questions. So what should we be doing with AI? Where should we focus? What makes the most sense for us to do? Lucky for all of us, my guest today can help us understand all of this and more. A self-described digital social media communications guy with roots in PR and the creative arts. His 30-year career spans time as a journalist, agency founder, author, educator, and strategist. A professor at McMaster University, associate director of the Future of Marketing Institute, and member of the Institute of Public Relations Digital Media Research Center, he's a leading AI researcher and LinkedIn Learning course creator. You may have seen him co-hosting the DM show on LinkedIn with Deirdre Breckenridge, or maybe you're one of the 500,000 subscribers to his Digital Marketing Trends LinkedIn newsletter. He's one of the indisputable thought leaders and influencers in AI and digital communications. Please welcome to the show, Martin Waxman. Martin?
Hi, Dan. Thank you so much. First of all, that's such a great intro. I wish I could live up to it, so I'm just going to say bye now.
Okay. Yeah, bye. Just subscribe to the 500,000. Be one of the 500,000 who subscribe to your newsletter and be done with it. No, it's interesting because it is very... it's a pleasure, let's say, to think about the people who are coming on and giving me the privilege of speaking with them, and all the things that you've done and how you can help us and help our listeners. And, sometimes I back into it in certain ways. Sometimes I just feel like, gosh, there's just so much here to offer. And I'm just going to set the bar relatively high and see if we can get to it. And I think, our listeners are quite forgiving if we don't get to all of it. But I have no doubt that if we don't get to all of it, they know where to find it. And that is by following you and checking out all the things that you have to offer. So, yeah, I'm just so happy you're here.
Well, thank you. Likewise, I'm really glad I've listened to your podcast. I've been following you. It turns out we've got lots of mutual connections and friends. I'm surprised we never really met before, say, a few months ago, just because of all the people we know. And I believe it was, I don't know where in the queue this is, but you recently talked to Jenny Dietrich, who is a good friend of mine, who I knew when she had fewer than 1,000 followers on Twitter. That's how long I've known Jenny. And we were on a podcast together a long, long, long time ago. And she always has amazing things to say. So I think she sets the bar really high. And then all of us kind of have to try to climb part way up.
Well, there is a coterie maybe of people in the PR and comms world. Several different coteries, I suppose, that overlap and mix with one another. But, for me, it all started with Ken Jacobs and Deirdre Breckenridge, both of whom I know that you are very, very familiar with. And it's funny because at different times, each one of them had said, do you know Martin Waxman? Do you know Martin? And it was just, I was like, one of you people have to introduce me to him. That's kind of how it goes. And then Ginny, and I don't know if you know Cami Huisa. There's all these great people who are in this incredible circle. And of course, the IPR itself, the Institute of Public Relations. You have you. I mean, Ethan McCarty has been a guest of mine and a great friend. I've had a few IPR folks on. Anne Green, I think, is on the IPR or page, et cetera. There's just so many. So it's inevitable that the connections connect, I suppose.
And good that it does. By the way, before we get started, I think fractured is a way better word than brain rot, personally, for the word of the year.
For the word of 2024? Yeah. You think so?
Yeah.
I feel like it is fractured, the whole landscape that we're in. And, I've seen it come up now, of course, in my conversation with Ginny, but also in some things I'm writing, in real, in the in the external world to the trending communicator, which includes some things going on out there, politics and whatnot that are undoubtedly fractured. But, look, AI is here for us. In addition to all of the tools that we have at our disposal as communicators, and as marketers, being able to deliver messages, tell stories, make sense of things. And I think it's in that making sense of stuff and storytelling that, we might be able to, glue some of those pieces back together again, or just accept them as they are and just tell stories in the way that everybody wants to hear them. I don't know. It's a wide open world for us. And I can't think of anybody better to talk about it than you. So here we are. Here we are. So let's talk about it, right? We've got Gen AI. We've got this whole thing happening in 2024. As of the time of this recording, it's right at the end of the year. And I think this is probably going to be published towards the beginning of 2025. So it's still going to be really fresh. Gen AI it's been the year of Gen AI, really. I mean, we said fractured was the word of the year, but maybe ChatGPT is the word of the year, or maybe it's OpenAI even, or whatever, something related to AI. But there's this general feeling that, it's gone super fast, and companies and individuals, are getting on board. But I feel like they're kind of playing dress up a little bit. They're getting to a certain point, and then they're sort of stalling out and stopping.
Yeah.
But I wanted to know from you what you're seeing with your students and, with your clients and all the people you'll deal with. What is the state of Gen AI for 2024, as far as you can see, and in communications and marketing, especially?
We were talking about this. It feels like to me, with all the announcements that were packed into the last 2 weeks of December, plus all the hype we've heard for the entire year, it reminds me of a Jenga game that the tech companies or Jenga AI game. How about that? The tech companies are playing with each other, and they keep going higher and higher and higher as it gets a little bit shakier, and they change one model. So they pull out a little piece from the bottom, put it at the top. And I'm hoping it doesn't come crashing down, because the thing is, with any new tool, you need time to test it out, to see what it does, to figure out where it's going to fit into your workflow or maybe not fit. And because everything is changing so fast, fracturing, as you said, it's harder and harder to do that. There's actually a term for this. It's called FOBO, the fear of becoming obsolete. Ooh. And it's really real. There's been studies around this. I wish I could quote them, but saying that, people are feeling like they don't know what they need to learn to do their jobs because of this crazy, changing world that feels a bit like to throw in yet another metaphor. It feels like we're walking through quicksand, or we're sitting at desks that are on top of quicksand. It's kind of sinking or shifting or moving around. And we just have to stop and figure it out. And that's tough to do when we're being besieged by generative AI news, announcements, tools from every single direction. But we do need to kind of stop, take a breath, and then just think about it strategically.
It's so hard to just stop and take a breath. And I think some of us are certainly in a little bit of a bubble in this AI zone, where we're paying very close attention to the developments in the Jenga game. And I love that. I'm going to keep using that because I certainly hope it doesn't all come crashing down either.
Yeah, me neither.
But I feel like the vast majority of people are still, I don't know. It's like, I think of it almost like the EV situation, the electronic or electric vehicles, where, the vast majority of people are just still on gas powered cars, and they will be for a very, very long time. And little bits of the EV world start to kind of filter down, like more hybrids. You get plug-in hybrids, you get these other things, but most people, are driving whatever they're driving, and yet you have the automakers. You have Tesla, the recent Jaguar stuff with new advanced vehicles coming out, charging stations theoretically going to be built at some point in the future. That's the big news, but the vast majority of people aren't paying attention to it. It's like it's happening in a different world. And I kind of feel that's almost like the state of AI now. I've seen studies where upwards of 85% of people are shadow AI users in companies, where they're using AI. They're just not really using it in any mandated way or as part of a workflow or in any strategic way.
No. They're bringing their own tools to work on their smartphones, say, and that's could cause some issues for organizations in the not so distant future, especially if they put in anything to do with proprietary information or data that somehow gets discovered by an organization's competitors or leaks out or who knows what is going to happen to it. Yeah. And then we'll see a crisis. Honestly, it's kind of surprising that at the end of 2024, beginning of 2025, we have not yet seen a full-blown AI crisis. Because if you think about social media, and really the way things are now feels a lot like the early days of social media. You have the bubble heads, let's call them. I would include us in that, the early-ish adopters of the technology. And we feel like everyone's using it, and yet that bubble is still quite small. And with social media, it took years for it to really, really become mainstream to the point where younger people were getting off of Facebook because their parents and grandparents were on it. Yeah. That takes a long time. I feel like we're there with AI. And so companies, if they aren't paying attention, they need to start putting in policies, guidelines, and figuring out how they can train their employees on some of the new tools, how they can adopt a test and learn mindset, a scientific mindset, so that when it really is here in full force, which is going to be sooner than we think, everyone's ready for it and everyone feels equipped. But going back to FOBO, it's like that fear is there because there's no real communication or not enough communication between the leaders, the C-suite, and frontline workers or employees about what they're thinking and how it's going to affect people's jobs, how they're going to help out, how they're going to make sure that they're going to keep their culture, their team in place, what shifts a team is going to experience, especially as we get to, and this will be something we can talk about, agentic AI.
Agentic AI. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's the one that has a lot of people either shaking in their boots or brimming with extreme and unreal exuberance. It's that is an interesting thing. We will talk. I think we'll get to that eventually.
Yeah.
The state of affairs now, though, sounds like, we've got with FOBO, happening out there, and with this hyper accelerated speed of development and rollout of new bells and whistles and features, that it's like, hold on, wait a second. I'm only still getting used to the first feature. I'm only using it to do my email. I mean, and now you expect me to hold up my phone and scan the room and like start asking it questions about what color my lamp needs to be. It's ridiculous to kind of make that leap. And those are stupid use cases, by the way. But
no, they're not actually. Not if you were a company that sells furniture.
Well,
it's a very smart question, like IKEA.
I mean, there's this huge gap, right? There's this just massive. I was talking with somebody recently about this, and like you, Martin. I have a foot in the training space. You're firmly planted with both feet, but I have a foot in the training space, and I've developed and given workshops to help people with the foundations of AI, fundamentals. And I started doing that almost a year ago now. And I went through one of the older decks that I had recently, and apart from some small, I guess, changes to privacy issues, or to like different regulations have come out, or the capabilities have changed, the context windows have changed, like that kind of stuff. Apart from those things, the core of what I've been delivering in these workshops is still very, very relevant. And it's surprising to me, because the tools themselves and the technology have moved so far ahead, but the people who need the training aren't there. They're not even close to there.
No.
And I worried about obsolescence too quickly when I started developing these things. But now I'm not so worried anymore. Like, maybe some tools will go away, but generally speaking, I'm not that concerned, at least for the interim, because a lot of companies and a lot of people really need the help.
Oh, yeah. Well, because we weren't trained on this. And the other thing is, I believe Christopher S. Penn said this, that social media was easier for communications professionals and marketers to get a handle on, in part because it's what we do. It's really conversational, and we understand it because it kind of acts like the media, except it's democratized, or was. Yeah. I'm talking about the idealized ages that we felt a few years back. But, anyone could start a channel, start a blog, which would be like an online publication. And that was really great. We understood that. Whereas with generative AI and the way it makes predictions, most of us don't have statistical backgrounds. We don't have computer science backgrounds, coding backgrounds. And so what's going on is a mystery. There's all of this vocabulary that we need to learn, like context window.
Yeah.
People don't realize it's just the memory, the working memory that you have to make sure that your prompts and responses stay on track. But unless you know it and take the time to learn it, you're a bit far behind. You hear these words, and it's just as if you say to yourself, I don't know, I'm never going to catch up. And that makes it worse. So we really need to be proactive, I think, as communications professionals, about learning these things in the way that we didn't with SEO. And honestly, it makes me want to tear my hair out. The fact that PR people did not jump on SEO, because SEO done well is earned media, as Ginny says, as so many other people say. And yet the way it's done now, it's like spam media, link buying, and
you're taking me. Yeah, you're taking me back to not that long ago, where we started really talking very, in depth about comtech or comms tech, depends on potato. But you were looking at the marketing technologies that communicators really need to understand, SEO is at the top of the list. And there seemed to be this like difficulty getting over the blood-brain barrier there with like, oh, SEO, that's a marketing thing. Oh, I don't, Google ads, I don't need that stuff. You're like, no, it's content. It is content. You know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it's because of the way that it rolled out and the way that SEO started that left this kind of, fixed impression, false definition in the minds of so many people where they're like, oh, SEO, it's a technical thing. I don't want to deal with that. But ultimately, if you've been following really anybody for the last 10 years, like Mark Schaefer's great talking about this. Yeah. It's like, you don't have to worry about SEO if you're writing relevant content and answering the things that people need to know. Like if you're tuned into your audiences and your markets, just write good stuff. The SEO will fall into place, right? And then if you're a big company and you have loads and loads of budget, then by all means, tinker and play with all of the technology that you need, make sure everything is all up to date. But apart from that, for communicators, we should have jumped immediately onto, wait a second, if people are searching for things, kind of needs to know what they're searching for. And then our narratives will get better because we'll understand what our audiences want and what our audiences are concerned about. I agree with you 100%. And I think just to bring it back to AI, I think that you're right. It's kind of like that now where we've got this, new technology that's not really even a technology. I mean, it is, but it's not like any technology of the past. And I feel like it got started by the wrong people in some ways for if you're thinking about, adoption, like mass adoption. It started with the programmers and the tech people, the IT people, talking about transformers and large language models and context windows and tokens, right? None of that is in the language of the communicator. But when you look at AI, and here's where I really wanted to, kind of, I don't know, almost not necessarily challenge what you were saying earlier, but like, I don't know if it's necessary for comms people to know all those terms, because the tools themselves are just tailor-made for us.
Oh yeah.
They're just like, by virtue of being a decent writer and a good storyteller and a logical thinker and a critical thinker, and that describes a lot of people, but it certainly describes people in comms and marketing. We have this power to interact and push and experiment and pilot with these tools that very few other people, like natively, innately, that very few other people have. Now, granted, of course, I'm not talking about all the amazing kind of coding and analytics and the sort of the math stuff that you can do with AI. Although, that should be a next sort of step, I think, for comms people. Once you understand, it's like, wait, now I can do this too. All right, but I feel like we miss the boat, or we're running for the boat and the people driving it are just going off to, their navigation's broken. There's like, the IT people and they're all wonderful people, don't get me wrong, but they're trying to push from their end. And the people who really have a handle on how to bring it to the masses, they're not letting them on the boat.
No, I think I think we're probably saying the same thing.
Yeah.
For me, it's a matter of getting to a level playing field, so that when the tech people are talking, we understand what they're saying.
Right.
And that's why a certain number of definitions I think are important. But I completely agree with you, because at its heart, AI, generative AI, is conversational. And guess what? That's what communicators and marketers do. And so if we think about every single element of our job, every task that we do that involves some type of conversation or, verbal or written interaction, AI could potentially potentially play some part in that. But that's, again, another one of those mind shifts. We need to think about how we can converse, because really, what is prompting, or when you're asking an AI for something, you're coding with words. And as you said, that's something we're really good at, coming up with a brief, building relationships, talking, communicating, writing. There's no reason why we shouldn't be the ones leading, or at least on the team that's leading, the way that we use these tools to tell stories, because ultimately it is all about storytelling.
It is. And, communicators especially have been for decades talking about getting a seat at the table, or having influence within the organization, or, being trusted advisors. This is a brilliant opportunity for us to really make that happen, but in a natural way. These Gen AI especially is, let's put aside the efficiency gains and the productivity gains, right? The idea that it permeates an organization, big or small, and the way to use this is conversational. It just makes sense for the comms people to kind of raise their hands and say, well, I can help everybody use this better.
Yes.
I can be here for them at the very minimum.
Absolutely. And we can ask the big, tough questions about how is this going to change privacy, or the relationships that we have with our various audiences or customers. Are these data sets biased? If so, how can we, manage that, or at least mitigate some of these biases so that we have a more inclusive, or, the types of communications are bringing everyone together rather than pushing people apart. What about safety and security? There's so many aspects that fall under PR. And it's funny, if you make a list of all the big ethical issues in AI, you can just go PR component, PR component, PR component, down that list. But again, if we're not paying attention, we'll miss the opportunities to have those conversations when the decisions are being made. And so we won't have the same kind of impact, and we'll continually be running for the bus, or swimming to the boat, or paddling maybe to the boat with our little, pedal boats that never go as fast.
Yeah, nobody's going to buy us the engines because they keep cutting our budgets, that sort of thing. I was curious about, I was curious about this idea that, we, oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. See, I need AI to help me think sometimes. Oh yeah, here it is. I remember now. So, there's so many things going on here. You mentioned agents, and we talked about, the role of comms and communicators, in this whole thing. Do you think that this kind of reluctance, or this kind of almost, maybe it's a fear of wholly embracing this because the developing is happening so fast? Do you think they're just waiting for, what Mark Schaefer calls the button, right? And we see this in some applications where it's just, look, I don't want to learn how to prompt, and I don't care. Just, if there's a button that says AI this, fine, I'm just going to do that. Right. Now, you and I both know that if you hit the button and you AI something, the results suck, generally speaking. You need a lot more than that, but it's getting there, right? And agents are part of this too. Yeah. But do you think people are just waiting for that? I mean, or what's your view?
I think, well, one, I wanted just a quick thing about the button. For anyone who has a Microsoft Copilot Plus PC, it's got a button.
It's got a button.
Right? It's got a key. But aside from that, my feeling is that PR people, we've always been a little bit more cautious than our marketing counterparts. That's just part of our nature. And we've asked those questions, and we consider various consequences more seriously than marketers. But because of that, we often let that skepticism pull back our curiosity. So we're curious, but we get too skeptical rather than saying, okay, these are the issues. Let's watch for them. Let's figure out how we can make a plan. And let's now test this in a small, hopefully safe type of communications environment and see what happens. Yeah. See, if we can learn something, then let's make it bigger and bigger. And I think that's what we need to do. It's so funny. If you think about back to that TV show Mad Men, there's one episode that sticks out for me. So Roger and Don are working for the first Nixon campaign in 1960. So they're talking about it, and they're looking at an ad that was done for Richard Nixon, and they go, this is boring. The PR guys must have done it. And it's like, okay, yes, even back then, we had that reputation.
We can't shake it. No. It's hard to shake that. There's an interesting sort of debate going on LinkedIn, and you mentioned my episode with Ginny about, within the episode we talked about how PR and comms really is responsible for building relationships.
Yes.
And, marketing is more about features and benefits. And now I don't think that that's like a clear cut thing, right?
No,
I think it's just for convenience sake. But some, good friend of mine said, wait a second, marketers build relationships too. And absolutely, that's true. So we don't do ourselves any favors when we're like, we're the relationships people and we'll deal with that part. But when you think about it, right, in the marketing side, or in the marketing continuum of which PR is part of it, and different parts of marketing are part of it, it should be integrated anyway. But in that whole thing, there are communications elements to each of the marketing campaigns. There's communications elements to a brand campaign, to a product launch, to everything, right? So it's all about integrating them together. So comms has a role to play, and you could be really you could quibble and say, well, technically there's that part of the brand campaign where you're writing a note, or where you're getting thought leadership, or you're getting PR for the brand. That's the PR team. That's the comms team. But it doesn't make sense to do that without the brand team, without the marketing people, right? So it's all like, just to try to pull it apart is actually a senseless Sisyphean effort, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I know marketing wants to swallow PR, and I do understand that, but I actually think PR should be a little bit more bold and say, you know what, interesting idea, but you got it backwards. We're going to swallow you, because it makes sense that the storytellers and the relationship builders would be managing all the relationships using Ginny's peso model that are paid, earned, shared, and of course owned at the center of it.
Yeah. And that's where, where AI is our kind of super weapon.
Yeah.
Because it's that conversational, that storytelling, the peso model, owning all of these different parts of the consumer journey, the influencer journey, the stakeholder relationships that Gen AI really is an accelerator and a booster for.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I've been saying that for a while, and other guests have said that too. But in your case, you're teaching it, you're learning it, you're living it. Let's turn to that for a moment here. Like you look, you're a legend. I mean, let me just put that out there.
I've got a lot of gray hair, so
but you also have 500,000 people reading your newsletter, and you teach at a couple universities, and I don't know how many people have more LinkedIn learning courses than you do. I mean, it's you've been creating LinkedIn learning courses for quite a while.
Yeah.
And I know you've just created a new course, and if you'd like to talk about that, of course, you're more than welcome to. And we'll get there. What I really wanted to kind of understand is, when we look at the comms and the marketing people, and let's just lump them all together now, you mentioned earlier, there's this whole, they have to learn. There's this whole learning problem going on, and in your work and the things that you're doing, how are you seeing this progress? Are you seeing advances in the training and the learning side of things? Where do you see the skills deficits? The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Well, one, it's now time for a commercial message. No, just kidding. I'm going to start with my students because I teach generally master's level students. So either ones who've just graduated or for the McMaster MCM program, these are working professionals who've gone back to do a degree part-time, as I did not that long ago. I graduated from the MCM program in 2019. Best thing I did was going back to do that. But when I see how students are approaching it, it gives me a lot of hope for the future because they are open-minded and they're ready to try things. I think what they need most is a little bit of guidance on their own creativity, their own brain power, their own intelligence, to say that, don't just rely on the AI. Use this as a tool to make you better. Because if all you do, and I do one exercise in class where I give the students a description of a product for a beauty brand, just a generic one. And I said, okay, now use AI, come up with a product name with tagline, some key messages or benefits in an image, and they all do it. And then I have them share it. And then I go through the list, and chances are 3 or 4 of them have virtually the same name because it's AI slop. They didn't change it. They just relied on the AI. Visuals the same, the taglines are the same or very similar. And so this is what I think all of us need to do, is get beyond the good enough or the okay enough output and figure out, how can we turn this into something original, interesting, unique, funny, surprising, that makes people want to take notice, given that there's so much stuff out there, and how can we avoid AI slop? I've read so many of these end-of-year reports talking about less is more. Oh my gosh, we've been hearing less is more for so long. I agree with that 100%. But let's make this the year of less is more. Sure, you can create things more quickly with AI, but stop. Think about it. Read it. Rewrite it. Throw it away if it's just boring junk. Don't just publish it because, hey, it's quick. I've got it. There it goes.
It seems so fundamental, right?
Yes,
it seems so fundamental,
doesn't it?
That you would do that.
Yeah.
When you're putting something out in your name or on behalf of a brand, you got to realize that it reflects on the brand and it reflects on your name, right? Look, if it's like a simple press release, or you're doing 100 social posts about some silly thing, you don't have to be Shakespeare, and that's fine. Yeah. But you do have to have a voice, and you do have to figure things out. Like, everything needs to be checked, and of course, we all know that these tools, they sometimes make mistakes. So you really have to look at it. They hallucinate.
Yeah.
That all that said, though, like I've been using it. I've been using a variety of tools. I call them my creative team. And my creative team and we sit together and I go from one to the other and, get one input there where their strengths are and go to another input where the other strengths are. I just did a newsletter draft and I went for a long form, for a change. And the longer the form is, the more likely that you have to do a whole lot more revisions, of course. But yes. I went for this longer form, and I mean, it did a bang up job. 65, 70% there, right? Definitely not good enough to put out there under my name. And if you count the revisions, so as the rewrites, the whole cloth rewrites after I've tweaked the prompt a little bit, maybe that was 3 or 4 times. Then it got to like, okay, this is good. But then if you count all like the change this section, do this to this section. But I think that there were 29, 30, 40 maybe interactions with with this part of my creative team. And, when it comes down to it, that's how long it takes to like manage a younger staffer or do something with a team. You're always going back and forth. I would hope that a staffer wouldn't need 14 revisions of one section, but
an agency
would
need 14.
Yeah. So to rely on the first output, all right, seems to be like lesson number one for people. Like, you think you're done after you ask it to do something one time. And sometimes you get, wait, I can keep going. It's like, yes, you can keep going. Yeah. It's a conversation. Sorry, I interrupted because
you know what? It's the magic wand effect. It's like you type in a little simple prompt, boom, and there it is. And we're so dazzled that we let the bright lights outweigh our judgment.
Yeah.
And the thing is, so much stuff, you kind of talked about this, Dan, so much output in communications and marketing is good enough, and it's based on time. Yeah. And to get a great output from AI, you need time as well. So that the whole idea of time, you still need to go back and forth. There's a lot of tweaking. There's a lot of editing, revising, of reprompting, of reformulating the prompt. It's not just the button that you mentioned earlier. Bing, okay, I'm done. Wow, now I can have a 5-hour lunch. Go back to the Mad Men days, and have a liquid lunch.
Yeah, there's no question that it saves a lot of time in certain ways. But at the same time, it opens doors to create new things that you've never created before, which actually adds to your remit. And you're saving time on those things, but it's additional time because you would not have done those things before. And that's where I find myself sometimes with a few of my adventures. And I was just wondering if you're looking at this with your students, like, when I went back and forth with this, with Claude, my buddy, and, got him, her, whatever you want to call it, to do the writing the way I wanted it to do the writing, it was a long process, but I had to ask the right questions. Yes. I had to challenge it. And I had to say, why did you say this? Or do you think that transition makes sense, Claude? Right. I try to speak with it, I suppose, as though it is a learning, kind of a great employee who's learning. It's like, do you think that was the right thing to do? Does that quote really make sense within that context? And it always comes back, goes, oh, you're right. It doesn't make sense in that context. You know what I mean? Because we're always right. It wants to please.
Yes.
But is critical thinking a part of the courses that you teach?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Critical thinking is fundamental to it because we have to step back and evaluate. And the other thing is, like anything, AI has that's one thing ChatGPT did, is it made the user experience, the UX, simple. Yeah. Because we all know how to chat. So very easy to do. Whereas 2 weeks before ChatGPT was around, Jasper AI was pretty darn good. So was, Copysmith. There were a whole bunch of Hyperwrite, another one. There were a lot of tools there, but they were more complex. You had to add in more data points or more structured data. And so the prompt wasn't as simple as just typing in, I want this, I want something else. So we have to factor in, and you touched on this, the learning curve that we have, learning how to talk to machines. Yeah, we can talk to people, but we need to learn how to talk to machines better. And the learning curve that AI needs when it gives us a prompt and it isn't quite right. And all of that is part of the time involved, like that learning curve no one is talking about. I just want next year to be the year where we get rid of AI slop. And there's certain words I never want to see again. I never want to see the word leverage anymore, unless you're talking about actually, using something or moving something with a lever. But it's almost like Web 1.0, everything was a solution.
Yeah.
And all you heard about solutions for this. And so it's like, well, what are you talking about? It's just junk.
There's a lot of those words. I mean, I was reading an article this morning that I know was not written by AI at all, right? It was totally written by a journalist. I read her column every week, and it's just very funny. But I saw the word delve pop up, and I was like, oh, crap, she's using AI. But then I had to remind myself, no, delve is actually a word that people use.
Yeah.
But it's been spoiled.
It has. Okay. So in one of my course descriptions that I wrote, 3 years ago, I actually had the word we delve into. Yeah. And this year, I rewrote it and removed the word delve because I thought, everyone's going to think that this is an AI description. I mean, there's some words that are still good, I think. Yeah. But so hopefully we can get a few of those back.
And I don't know whether this is a sad comment on how corporate my writing became, or whether it is just, okay, I was just using the words that people normally use that have now been co-opted by AI. But like, you had your delves, you had your the something landscape,
yes.
The
check,
all these, and the environment, that all these different words, but you know what? They're not bad in their own, when they're appropriate. There's usually better ways to describe things, but if you're in a hurry. But now that I see it, I'm the same way. I see delve, I'm like, oh crap, I got to change that.
Well, it's like AI soup. It becomes AI soup. And when you see that, when there are too many of those words together, innovative, game-changing, delve into a new innovative, game-changing device.
And it's only doing that because
you say that
so much of our writing has been that way for 20 years. And, AI is the biggest Mad Libs machine out there that's finding the best or the most probable word to fill in the blank. And if delve has been out there more than any other word, well, guess what? That word's most likely going to be delve.
Yeah, it's going to pop in there because it scores high on the token counter board. It just gets bumped up there in the calculation. But, it is so funny with that because you see that in emails too, with autocomplete. And that we've been seeing for a while. And there was a point at which I thought to myself, oh my gosh, my emails are so darn predictable. And I've got to switch it up because it's like what I thought was conversation was actually just wrote. May as well just automate it.
It's interesting. This is sort of veering from the topic maybe a little bit, but those boring kind of corporate emails and, all of this language, I think a lot of it is just our own fault. I mean, I do blame a combination of comms and HR for this.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah, because we've had the implicit permission to bore people to death for the last 30 years. And now it's coming back.
Well, we've also... it is. And we've also had this directive to not offend anybody and to make sure that, there is not one single solitary individual out there that can sue us based on a word. So you're right based on fear, and you're right based on, will this pass the legal check? And anybody who's ever read 3 sentences of a contract knows that is not the way that you want to write.
Yeah.
But that's the way people have been writing now for 20 years. It's no surprise. I think that that AI does it, and maybe this is a good shakeup for us. Maybe I'm not saying we should go out and offend people, but I certainly think that this idea that we need to get more creative with our writing and more unique with our writing, and ironically, we can become more unique writers with the help of AI.
Yes, by asking it to critique us, to offer suggestions, and not to just take the easy way out and say, I need a 500-word blog post on the latest hair care product. Here's what we do, and it's like, boom, okay, AI slop. We need to figure out, okay, what is it, and encourage it to challenge us and then challenge ourselves. Because, if you come up with an amazing idea, one, you've done it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And two, when it gets in front of your audience and they share it and respond to it, you realize, okay, this is great. I've struck a nerve or hit a chord,
And who cares if AI helped you do that? I mean, in fact, you should be proud that AI helped you do that, because you've boosted your own relevance and your own resonance by taking advantage of the technologies available to you, which is what you should be doing as a professional.
Yeah. But don't take the lazy way out.
No, of course not.
And just let AI do it for you. And this is something that, we kind of chatted about this in my most recent newsletter. Something I've been thinking about is, if we outsource every single idea to AI, every single first draft to AI, what's that going to do to us? Like, we won't be doing any of the heavy lifting. So sure, we can lift a teacup, but we can't do a push-up or lift 50 pounds. And bad metaphor, but whatever.
No, it's true. Well,
with our brains, are our brains going to become less creative? And are we going to start being led by AI rather than us leading it? And I think we need to keep that at the very forefront of what we're doing with AI tools.
Yeah, it's important, and that's I encourage people to really try like 100 times the same prompt, over and over again, and then you're going to get so bored of what you're seeing that you're going to be like, shoot, if I have to do this again, I'm going to need to change this up, and you will essentially bore yourself into being better at doing this kind of stuff. But I wanted to ask you though, we're coming up on it. Look at that.
I know.
If we're outsourcing our creativity to AI, right? And I think more and more people are going to continue to do that. Then doesn't that position us or people in marketing and communications who are creative and who are writers first, who are visual artists first, doesn't that position us actually to excel?
I hope so.
Rather than get replaced. I mean, I think there's a layer of people who really are just going to be, it's a bell curve, I suppose. There's going to be all that middle kind of mediocre group in any collection of people. And look, they need to figure out how to get better at what they do. But the people who are really good writers, I think are going to, as long as they kind of don't give up, like you said, don't outsource things. Figure out how to accelerate what you're doing and enhance what you're doing with AI, but don't lose your own creative spark. I like what you said in your piece, where in your recent newsletter, where you said, people are using AI for the first draft. Don't use AI for the first draft. Write your own first draft.
Yeah,
and then go to AI. And maybe that's, if it's a 500 word blog post, sure. If it's a 3,000 word kind of feature piece, a little bit of help might be nice, but still, you need to be building the blocks yourself.
And, you're talking about doing that. You started with your data, your conversations,
right,
and got AI to analyze that.
Yeah.
So
that's different.
It's kind of starting with the human ideas first. Still, it just, each approach is different. There's no one right way, but I just feel like, we can't give up on our creativity. And I do think that could be our so-called superpower, being creative, whatever you are great at doing. That's something I do encourage my students to do. Find out what you're really good at and what you love to do, and then go for that and figure out where these tools can help you get better. And they're fantastic at seeing another perspective if you know what questions to ask.
Well, as we get towards the end of of our conversation here, why don't we look at some of those tools for real quick? Because like you've been really on the front lines of this for years now. And anybody who reads your newsletter or sees the DM show knows this, but like, if you had to like pick some favorites for different tasks, what are the things that you use the most? And, what are the tools that you absolutely recommend people to be proficient in?
Well, I think the thing is, part of it depends on where you work. So I work for myself. And so I have a paid ChatGPT account. And I like that because it's multimodal. So I can use it for image generation, for text. But my preferred, conversational AI is Claude, or as Canadians like to call it, Claude. The French pronunciation. But I do like Claude. I think it's quite interesting. I've tried Grok. Grok makes me laugh.
Well, when you set it on the funny mode, it is funny. It
is funny, and it can be quite snarky and mean if you ask it to evaluate you. Yeah, that's sort of amusing. But those are my two favorite go-to tools because you can't pay for everything. Yeah. I do love for image generation a company called Ideogram. So it's IDEOGRAM.ai. I've only used the free version, but they're fantastic and just a little bit more creative than what you might get from some of the bigger tools. Yeah. I also like I'm not good at visuals.
Yeah.
And so there is a company called napkin.ai. And what you do is you put a prompt in, I need a chart with these icons, or you give it a list and it'll make a workflow or a chart or a mind map or a diagram. Now there's a similarity to it, but oh my gosh, it would take me hours and hours in PowerPoint or in Canva to do that. Whereas here it's like, I write it, I change the writing and, this is really good. Download the image and all of a sudden you've got a ready-made visual slide. I love Napkin AI for that. I've tried some of the text to video apps. I mean, Sora's good, Runway's good, Pika's, they're okay
early
for
days.
What they are. But, unless you have a visual mind and really take the time to prompt it and say, okay, start with a wide shot. The camera zooms in on a close-up of a man in a dimly lit room. It's raining outside. You can, you really have to get into that. I mean, you still need to storyboard. We're not at the stage yet.
Yeah.
Where you can say, okay, I got an idea about this person who's teaching and he gets in trouble, whatever it is. It won't do that. You've got to come up with all the different elements. And guess what? Like anything, it takes time.
Yeah. I'm with you on the video stuff. I started playing around with it and I just don't have the patience to figure out the best way to prompt these yet because I know, hearkening back to my earlier point about just waiting for the button, I know that those are going to get a lot easier to use.
Yes.
But what I really love is the music one. I like Suno. Suno.
Yeah,
AI.
Me too. And Udio. Oh my gosh, I was going to mention those just now.
I love Suno. I mean, I've been using stock music for my podcast. It's only a couple of seconds really in the beginning, and I've done some fun stuff for internal communications at my last company. Songs about toilets and such. Really hilarious in anthem rock, funk, and bluegrass. So really, you can have a lot of fun with it, especially if you have a musical mind. But the new version of Suno is really excellent, and I'm considering now just creating different themes for my show just based on that. But it's still kind of gimmicky at this point. I love it, but it is a little gimmicky.
No, it is. It's a fun thing to do too, and it is pretty great that you can do that. One other tool that I really like, and where I think Google is excelling, is Notebook LM.
Notebook LM.
Oh my gosh, it's a lot of people are talking about it, but it's people in the bubble who are talking about it. It's fantastic. Amazing. It's fantastic for curating information, for finding information, for asking questions, and then those AI, podcast summaries. Sure, they sound like a crappy morning show duo, but it's not bad, and it's going to get better.
I will say, I'm a paid Google person, and the latest upgrades to Notebook LM as of the time of this show are outstanding. Outstanding. 300 sources for each notebook that you create. So you're basically able to create your own language model based on up to, like, I don't know how many, that's, a couple of million words worth of content. And now I just discovered this today. I didn't realize this. Maybe this is an older feature, or, relatively older feature, but you can set the style of the responses you get from Notebook LM. There's like a default. Mm-hmm. There's a guide. There's an analyst, right? And maybe one more, and a custom, I think. And I was using the default, and I was like, hey, this is fun. It's great. And I was really impressed. But then I changed it to guide, and I noticed immediately that the output was 100 times better for what I need. And that's the other half of my creative team, by the way, is Notebook LM, LM Claude, Notebook LM Claude, generally speaking. And I still like ChatGPT, and I'm looking forward to Gemini 2.0 when it really starts to get going, because I have a bone to pick with Gemini, but I'm hoping they can wipe the slate clean with this one. But man, I'm with you, Notebook LM. And if everybody out there, if you don't have Notebook LM, go to notebooklm.google.com like now and play with it.
And just get the free version.
Outstanding. Yeah, free version is perfectly fine. And now you can interact with the audio.
Yes,
they're rolling it out. I haven't done that yet. I'm dying to do it. In Canada, we get this stuff later. Oh, right.
Because we're a secondary market. But hey, I want to say to them, no, you should be testing it here because we're small. And you get the same kind of demographic to a lesser or greater extent as you would in the US. Yeah, so why not?
It would only make sense.
Pay attention to us, Google. Don't leave us out in the cold.
Exactly. You heard it from Martin Waxman. So, Martin, before we wrap it up, can you please tell us a little bit about your LinkedIn learning courses?
Yes.
And the new ones that are coming out, and how people can sign up.
Okay, so if you have a LinkedIn Learning a LinkedIn professional account, or your company has access to LinkedIn Learning, or you're associated with many academic institutions, or you just want to sign up for a free month, you can access linkedin.com/learning. My courses recently have been around AI. So my newest one is generative AI. Using generative AI in public relations. And it's really done exclusively from the perspective of a PR professional. I also have another course using generative AI for digital marketing, which is similar, but more of a marketing focus. And then I do a series course called Digital Marketing Trends, which ties in with my newsletter. And twice a month, we release new videos. It's almost like a little mini newsy thing to help people keep up. And then a few other courses. But you know what? You can check it out if people want.
Well, I will for sure. And, I know I've been following your newsletter for a while now anyway. But thank you for sharing that, Martin. And just before we go, I'll give you, last words. Is there anything that we missed, or is there something that you want to talk about that's like keeping you up at night? Anything that, you want to kind of share, be the harbinger of doom, or the harbinger of, or the, what's the opposite of the harbinger of doom? Is it the welcomer of light? I don't know. But
yes, I think the welcomer. Well, actually,
should we be the welcomer of light today?
What I do want to say is, when it comes to generative AI, we're all newbies. We're all neophytes in this. I mean, it may feel like it's been around forever. It hasn't. So we all have an opportunity to figure out how the tools work, how we can use them more effectively. But we need to be proactive. We need to be entrepreneurial, and we need to take some initiative with them, and then find our sources that we can go to who can curate the information for us so we don't feel like we have to read or watch every single thing. And I'm just going to end with one little other suggestion is for people to follow the Future of Marketing Institute. It's out of the York Schulich School of Business. I'm the associate director. We have a group of fantastic and such really bright students who are coming up with what's new in content, curating it, and it's a great source to keep up to speed on things. And it's free.
I love it. Future of Marketing Institute. It's not to be confused with FOMO. It's FOMI, FOMI.
But or FMI now. We got rid of the O.
It's FMI. You got rid of the O. Okay. So FMI, the Future of Marketing Institute. You can find all of this information on Martin's LinkedIn page. Just look for Martin Waxman on LinkedIn and definitely sign up for his newsletter there. You can go to martinwaxman.com and learn all about Martin and the things that he's been doing. And Martin, are you active on any of the other socials in any significant way?
Instagram for fun. So you can find me, Martin Waxman. And I'm starting to get interested in Blue Sky like everyone else.
Yeah.
Still new there. And it's kind of nice because it feels sort of fresh.
I have my gripes with Blue Sky. I heard some podcasters call it Blue Ski the other day, and I can't stop calling it Blue Ski. It's killing me.
Now it's going to be in my head too.
Yeah, but I find it like if you're going there to talk about or to kind of look at content that is completely unrelated to anything important, it's great. As soon as you start to trip over into, an opinion of any kind related to a hot topic, a hot political topic of the day, forget it. You're in a very different world over there, and you better agree with everybody. Or else is kind of the feeling over there. But,
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah,
because I've just been delving into it delving into the shallow end. If you can delve into the shallow end, I
think you can. I think like a lot of these platforms, it's very responsive to what you do. So what you get is what you get. But okay, well, martinwaxman.com, Martin Waxman at LinkedIn, and look again, subscribe to Digital Marketing Trends on LinkedIn. Martin, it has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much.
It was fantastic, Dan. Thank you so much for having me.
You got it. Come back again. You're going to have to come back again for sure.
Anytime.
Right. Thanks for taking the time to listen in on today's conversation. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to subscribe through the podcast player of your choice, share with your friends and colleagues, and leave me a review. 5 stars would be preferred, but it's up to you. Do you have ideas for future guests or you want to be on the show? Let me know at dan@trendingcommunicator.com. Thanks again for listening to The Trending Communicator.